The Madman!
Welcome to the top cards of Custom Hearthstone of the week. Custom Hearthstone holds a weekly design competition. This week's design was Locations. The idea of a location is it's a card that when played takes effect for 4 turns. One of the designs here is the Necropolis. 5 mana for Warlock. Casting a spell summons a 3/2 skeleton for your opponent. Should probably read, after casting a spell, summons a 3/2 skeleton for your opponent in order to actually play around AoE so it doesn't just die to AoE. So it's a symmetrical effect, affects both sides. The skeleton warrior summoned is a 2 mana 3/2 death rattle. The Necropolis lasts 1 turn longer, so it kind of plays along the location theme. It's a variable timer, and it's clearly a design for Zoo or a Warlock deck that uses very few spells. And hopefully you're up against a deck that uses very many spells. They try to control you. You summon more skeletons, you keep the effect rolling. Now the problem with this is that Zoo usually doesn't want to run a card that could do nothing. And this is exactly such a card. It only pays off after your opponent has cast 2, or even only kinda good if your opponent casts 3 spells. So it's really weak, and the design of it is really tough and problematic because either you balance it to an amount where it becomes really oppressive towards these decks, and it's the type of, oh, wow, they played the Necropolis, I guess I can't win, that sucks. Or it becomes so weak that you would never really play it in any deck. So I'm gonna rate the design 2 stars, and I'm gonna rate the balance also 2 stars. As is, it's useless, and redesigned, it could be oppressive. It's tough. Murdoch the Murloc, a Shaman hero card. 1 mana, Battlecry, draw a Murloc from your deck. A little bit different, you gain 1 armor when you're playing it. Turns your hero power into Adapt a Friendly Murloc. So clearly meant for the Shaman Murloc deck. Never seen anything like that, but if there were any exception to the hero type cards, it would probably be a Murloc hero. I'm gonna give the design of the card 3 stars. Reason being, it's the type of card where it seems pretty important to have this card when you're playing a Murloc deck, but on the virtue of it being 1 mana, you don't see it all that often early. Doesn't suck when you draw it late, because you still draw a Murloc, so it cycles, and you can immediately use the mana to adapt the friendly Murloc. But having a hero card at this low just feels wrong. And it's also the idea of, it doesn't really push a Murloc Shaman though. Murloc Shaman isn't even close right now. You know, I talked myself into it. I'm docking design a point. Let's give it 2 stars design. Balance-wise, the card is fair. So I reluctantly give it 5 stars on balance. It feels almost wrong to give it 5 stars, but it's like, yeah, sure. Card seems fair. Arcane Trap. 2 mana secret. When your opponent casts a spell, increase its cost by 2. Dispel it if they can't afford it. Which should read, counter it if they can't afford it. I think it's kind of a cool effect. I feel like it's fair because it's a counter spell. And counter spell is fair as well, it costs 1 more mana, but your opponent can play around it by just having 2 mana extra. But when I looked at Hunter, I'm like, does it really fit in Hunter? Where I thought it would really shine though is in Rogue. Did you know that rogues actually have secrets also? It feels like more of a rogue ability to disrupt spellcasters. The naming should be redesigned, but mostly everything else can stay the same. So for the design, I'm going to give it 4 stars just because it should be rogue instead. If it were rogue, I'd probably give it 5 stars. And the balance, I think 5 stars. Nice little trick. Bonacci. 3 mana 1/1. At the end of each turn, add this minion's health to its attack, then swap them. Now, I normally dock points for just meme cards, things that couldn't fit into the Hearthstone game, because I feel like when we're designing Hearthstone custom cards, it should be cards that can go in. But I think it can be easily reskinned into a mech, and mechs do nerdy things just like this. The way it works is, at the end of your turn, it would be a 1/2, and then after that, it would become a 2/3. After that, it's a 3/5, and so on and so on. So I considered, is this OP if you buff it? And while it can grow out of control pretty fast, buffed or not buffed, it is pretty weak for the mana cost turn that it comes out. And there have been cards that snowball out of control at 3 mana. There's things like Hench Clan Thug, Fledgling, Shade of Nex, Remus. Though nothing rises at quite the rate of Fibonacci. So for the design of the card, I think it's clever. 3 stars. Dangerous, and I feel like doing it at the end of each turn is too disruptive, maybe just at the end of your turn. Balance-wise, 4 stars. I also think that the card should be a higher mana cost because such a big snowball effect probably does not belong on 3 mana. It's just not fun to have your opponent play the card, and if you don't have an answer, you just lose. Which means, now that I think about it, I'm gonna dock the design down to 2 stars. I think I missed the fact of the attack buff. Like, I was focusing so much on the health buff, but the attack buffs tend to give more bang for the buck than the health. If you play it on 4 and then you cold blood it, 3 mana, 5/1, it would become a 1/6. And then after that, it would become a 7/6. And that would be really spooky. I'm docking the balance down to 3 stars also. Paladin, big 10 mana flashy card, Vindicator Milord. 9/9. Battlecry, adapt your hero power. Note, it should read as adapt a minion summoned by your hero power. If you were to be Jiraxis and somehow play Vindicator Milord, you can adapt your hero power, and your Infernos can be adapted. Note that with the Uther Death Knight hero power, and I was thinking about this, if you Battlecry adapted Stealth, the Stealth adaptation is only for a turn. So that works out fine. Design 4-star, balance 3-star. It's clunky, it's just a card that does nothing on the turn that it comes out is just not going to work for these control paladins out there. I feel like a better design would have been somewhere in the 6 or 7 range of mana and adjust the stats accordingly. The effect is cool though, and I feel like the design and balance can be salvaged. Huge Fairy Dragon, 6 mana 4/8, Dragon. Can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. Before you say OP, Spectral Knight was a card for 5 mana, it was a 4/6, which also couldn't be targeted by spells or hero powers. You added 1 mana, and you added 2 health, and you added the dragon tag to it. But my problem with this card is I look at it and I'm just thinking, how did this make it to the top cards of Custom Hearthstone? It's kind of uninspired. So the design, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Actually, I'll just give it 5 stars for balance. I think you could print such a card, and it would be pack filler, maybe it would see play sometimes. Void Shot, it's a hunter card, 4 mana, deal 5 damage to an enemy minion. If it triggers a death rattle, counter it. Or perhaps for more succinctness, it could just say, death rattles do not trigger. And I think it's cool to be able to counter death rattles in a way that isn't just silence. So even though it could say, deal 5 damage to an enemy minion, silence it, I feel like it's cooler designed to have it be more narrow on top of that, because there are subtle differences. Right now it's a bit too weak, because you would just run Spellbreaker, as 4/3 is stronger than deal 5. But I feel like you could bump this up to deal 6 damage, or I feel like a redesign to destroy a minion if it has Death Rattle, it doesn't trigger. But an admirable design in introducing the idea of not triggering Death Rattles. 4 stars. Balance-wise, it's too weak, but it could easily be upped in order to not be too weak. I think simply making it deal 6 damage instead would be a good start. So balance 3 stars. Lady in Yellow. It's for Hunter. 5 mana, 3/4, Battlecry, cast Banana on all beasts in your deck. This is one of those cards that is memey enough to make it to the top voted custom Hearthstone cards. But in terms of design, it's just a mist caller, which doesn't actually affect the cards in your hand. But because it's Lady in Yellow, which is a play on Lady in White, and it's banana colored, everyone's like, oh man, must upvote. So the design on this, 1 star. The balance on this, 1 star. You've actually managed to make a card that's weaker than Mistcaller, congratulations. Milord Earthwalker for Druid, 8 mana, 9/7. Choose 1 at start of game. Interesting idea. Start with 5 mana crystals and 10 max health, or 50 health and only gain mana on even turns. There's a lot wrong with this card. Mostly involving starting with 5 mana crystals is ridiculous. It's as if you've cast 4 wild growths at the beginning of the game. Like, just picture that. For 0 mana, you have cast 4 wild growths, you've drawn 4, and then you've done that. And the only weakness is you start with 10 max health. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a pretty big weakness, but then you consider that Druid can actually gain health through armor gains such as Ferocious Howl or through branching paths. Horrendously overpowered, and the second one is horrendously underpowered because it's basically destroying a mana every other turn. You would never win with a situation like that. I feel like jump-starting the Druid's mana curve is just inherently unfun. Being able to choose an option to start with more mana crystals is just terrible design. 1 star. Balance, 1 star. It is probably one of the most imbalanced cards I've ever seen here. Frustrated Teacher. For Mage, 4 mana, 3/5, spell damage +1. At the start of your turn, summon a 1/1 late student with spell damage +1. Kind of a play on Violet Teacher, which is also 4 mana, 3/5. And its teachers are prompt because each time you cast spells, you get them. So not strictly better than Violet Teacher. I find the design of this card dangerous. It snowballs big time, and 4 mana 5 health isn't that easy to get rid of, which is why you sometimes play Violet Teacher on turn 4 and even don't have spells for it. Probably a little bit too strong. I think it should probably just be a 3/4. It's got a bit of innovation in that the spell damage +1 is kind of cool. So design, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. Balance, 4 stars. I think it's possibly fine as is, but a bit dangerous and snowbally. Probably should be a 4 mana 3/4. And finally, last, we have Thor God of Thunder. 6 mana 6/5, battle cry, equip Mjolnir. 2 durability and 2 attack weapon. Cast Lightning Storm when this attacks. Fun note, when I clicked on the link to read more about the card, the author intended for Lightning Storm not to have overload when it happens. Now I decided, should we actually rate this card based on this or his later revised version? But given that this is the card that actually got upvoted and voted on, I decided we're gonna rate this one instead. So, first of all, there is a name in Hearthstone lore, which is close enough, which has the theme of this. Thor, which could conceivably have this. Lightning Storm is a 3 mana card with 2 overload. Given that the author didn't even intend for Lightning Storm to overload you, that means each time you attack, you're basically gaining 5 mana by casting a spell. But you have 2 Lightning Storms plus 2 attack on top of that. Also, you have the interesting effect, which isn't that known, but if your weapons are casting spells when you attack, if you attack a minion and you cast a spell and the spell kills the minion, your attack gets refunded and you don't even lose the durability, and then you can just attack something else. So, hilariously enough, the card is even more imbalanced than you think it is. So, 5 mana effect each time you attack. It's twice, so it's 10 mana. And then you have a 6/5 on top of that, which is 4.5 mana. And then you have a 2 attack weapon on top of that. 2/2 weapon is probably something worth around 2 mana. So this card should cost about 16 mana. You would think that, but that would actually be underestimating a little bit more also. Because when you bundle cards together, that actually increases the mana cost of them. I mean, just imagine a card that's a 6 mana 6/5 and it draws you a Lightning Storm. That's ridiculously good already. Design of the card, 1 star. Because at the end of the day, it's really, you're playing a guy and you're equipping a weapon and the weapon is doing something. It's is that even really that refined? How did this end up being one of the highest voted cards? Hilarious bugs with Mjolnir and the fact that you can attack infinitely and then never actually lose any durability with it. Hilarious imbalance of OP-ness, 1 star on balance, by the way. Anyways, Custom Hearthstone. Wag of the finger at you guys. Try to upvote cards that are actually remotely fair.